Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to our first public input workshop in our process to update the Sonoma County Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP. Thank you for joining us tonight and contributing your time to help prepare where you live for wildfire. Tonight, we're here to listen to your community input regarding preparing for wildfire in Sonoma County's first Supervisorial District. Tonight's process will work best from your computer versus a phone, so if you're able to, please join us via your computer. We're recording tonight's meeting and it will be available soon via the Permit Sonoma YouTube channel, where it will also have closed captioning. My name's Tracy Cattleman. I'll be facilitating tonight's meeting on behalf of Permit Sonoma and Digital Mapping Solutions. In addition to facilitating, I'm a registered professional forester and I've been working in community wildfire preparedness in North Coastal California for over 20 years. I'm happy to be here with you tonight as we move our community engagement process into the Zoom virtual world. I'm joined tonight by Caroleon Safford of Permit Sonoma, Esther Mendano of Digital Mapping Solutions, Roberta McIntyre and Kaylin Notch with Fire Safe Sonoma, and my colleague Amanda Simpson at Forever Green Forestry. Next slide. So first, a few Zoom basics. Please be sure you are muted and to turn off your video. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, you can send direct chat messages to our team via the chat icon on your toolbar, which is likely on the bottom of your screen in the middle. If you need subtitles, you can enable live transcription on the bottom right of your screen by clicking on the live transcript icon, then select Show to Subtitle. If you'd like to hear the meeting in Spanish, you can select that via the interpretation button on the bottom right of your screen. Next slide. Bienvenidos a nuestros vecinos quienes prefieren hablar en español. Tenemos interpretación disponible hoy gracias a Irving Huerta. Irving es un planificador del condado de Sonoma. Irving's joining us tonight from the planning department at Permit Sonoma y nos está ayudando esta tarde con la traducción. Para participar en español puede ir a Interpretation abajo al lado derecho de su pantalla. Desde ahí puede elegir entre inglés y español. Finalmente, para escuchar el canal de español mejor, puede silenciar el audio original o mute original audio. Cualquier duda, por favor, mándenos un mensaje por chat. Next slide. Zoom provides a couple of options for your audio. If you don't have a great internet connection or having a hard time hearing us, click on the up arrow next to the audio icon below the microphone at the bottom left of your screen. From there, you can choose to switch to phone audio and follow the instructions to link your audio and video or computer connection. If you have any other questions or issues using Zoom, please send Kaylin a message in the chat. Next slide. Tonight's meeting is designed to encourage your input to the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP process. We want to hear from you as this is a community wildfire protection plan. So we have two purposes tonight. First, we're offering you the opportunity to learn from us as local experts about wildfire risks and what you can do to better prepare yourselves as individuals and as communities. Second, we're providing an opportunity for you to identify community values, risks and hazards, and potential projects for the CWPP update. Next slide. This is where we're talking about outcomes. In terms of our outcomes, or what we expect us all to leave this meeting with tonight, we will provide to you how you as residents can continue to provide input into the CWPP update process throughout the summer, how to use the online hub site to download information and provide input throughout the process, best practices regarding home hardening and defensive space, and information on local fire protection capabilities and needs. Next slide. We would like to learn from you tonight your local knowledge and concerns regarding wildfire risks and hazard in your communities where you live, your priority community values at risk to be protected from wildfire where you live, and your potential priority projects to prepare your neighborhoods and communities in the face of upcoming wildfires. Next slide. Finally, this is our agenda for tonight. We're starting with a brief welcome and introductions, including with their County Supervisor Gorn, who will be coming up next. We'll provide a series of short presentations about the CWPP and what we can all do to prepare for wildfire. Then we'll be moving into breakout rooms by geographical planning divisions. We'll go through an interactive process there with you to identify your priority values and assets at risk to wildfire, wildfire risks and hazards, and potential projects to address these risks and hazards. Please be respectful of your neighbors in this process. Finally, we'll come back together and hear from each of the breakout rooms and close by 7:30. I know that there are many of you with us tonight, including Supervisor Gorin, who have suffered enormously over the last 5 years from the profound losses of wildfire. All of us here want to acknowledge your losses and thank you for your strength in coming tonight to collaborate towards finding ways to live with fire in Sonoma County. So now we will hear from your County Supervisor, Susan Gorin, about her priority concerns and actions regarding wildfire in the 1st District and the importance of the CWPP process. Welcome, Supervisor Gorin. And we'll need you to unmute.
Unmute.
There you go.
I have to start over.
So thank your video if you like.
Thank you all for being with us. And we really appreciate you being with us tonight. And I need to thank all of the amazing folks who have been instrumental in putting this series of forums together, giving us an opportunity to come together and to work together to collaborate on updating our community wildfire protection plans. As a supervisor, I was visiting Monon's Rill a number of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and I happened to meet this dynamo, Caroleon Safford, who was working with Monon's Rill at the time in developing a community wildfire protection plan. And it was absolutely fascinating to me, but I thought, oh, this is so irrelevant, right? And we're in this beautiful area that will never be exposed to fire. And yet the time came. In 2017, we know that wildfires ripped apart Sonoma County and many, many areas in my district, and over 5,300 families lost their homes in devastating results. And the journeys have been long and arduous. And as you've heard previously, I lost my home as well. I'm getting ready to move in, but it's been almost 4 years and it's not been easy. So tonight is the first Community Wildfire Protection Plan community meeting. And there will be one in each of the supervisorial districts in the coming weeks. We all have friends and colleagues throughout the county. I encourage anyone here tonight to let the folks know in other parts of the county that there are opportunities for them to participate in the preparation of the CWPP in their areas. You can share the link that you use to register with them, or just tell them to Google Sonoma County Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and they'll get to the right place to register for the next workshop. This beautiful district has seen its share of devastating fires over the last 4 years. And we know how important it is for community to come together to prepare for fires. And yet the time is here for us to update our county community wildfire protection plan. We assumed that in 2017, we had seen the last of the fires with the Sonoma Complex fires and the Tub Fire. Little did we know that we would be visited with devastating wildfires in 2019 with the Kincaid Fire, and last year with the Walbridge, Myers, and Glass Fire. We didn't think it was possible to devastate the Sonoma Valley and the St. Helena area anymore, but yet indeed it happened. Fire has always existed, and we know that Native Americans used fire prescriptively to great effect. But now we have more homes developed in the upper reaches of our mountains, and the consequences has been devastating, absolutely. But we are also facing a future with climate change. And as we know, during the drought year that we're experiencing this year, that the conditions are ripe this year and in previous years for those devastating fires. It is staggering to me, the destructiveness that we have seen throughout California, Western United States, the ferocity of the fires, the megastorms have been incomprehensible for even hardened fire professionals. And that is what we're here to talk about. How do we prepare for that? There are many ways that we can prepare for that. And here are just a few examples. Let me see. Vegetation management, grazing, removing fire-prone vegetation like juniper and eucalyptus trees. Those were the vegetation that took my house aflame. Forest management, wildfire cameras, shaded fuel breaks, creating neighborhood fire-safe councils. This is not an either-or situation. There is no one right solution. This is all of the above. And it's time for all of us to come together to recognize the many strategies that we have at hand. So tonight is your opportunity to participate in the update of the CWPP. And some of you may be members of the Fire Safe Council or members of a fire district board. And I would argue that all of us have individual understanding of the fire, the devastation, but we need to pool our collective energies and experiences and knowledge tonight and in the future. So thank you so much. With your participation, we will develop the county Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and we will use that to prioritize projects in our district and around the county to be funded perhaps through PG&E funds or other source of fundings to approach the job at hand systematically, comprehensively, with all of us joining together. So thank you so much to all of the panel for participating tonight, and I'm anxious to start listening to some of the conversations. Tracy, take it away.
Thank you, Supervisor Gorn, for your opening words this evening. We appreciate you joining us tonight. We're now going to move into the technical presentations for the evening. We'll begin with a presentation by Carolyn Safford from Permit Sonoma. And as the supervisor mentioned, if you've been working in fire and especially community wildfire preparedness in Sonoma County, you've likely worked with Carolyn. She's been leading this effort for decades, including as a principal author of the 2016 CWPP, which we're updating now. And she is now spearheading the CWP update process for the county. Carolyn will be sharing her expertise tonight regarding community wildfire protection plans, values, risks, and hazards, and why they matter in this process, and finally, how homes burn. During Carolyn's presentation, we'll invite you to contribute to a word cloud regarding your priority actions, so stay tuned for details in her presentation. Welcome, Carolyn.
First, I'd like to talk a little bit about what is a CWPP, or Community Wildfire Protection Plan. The CWPP was defined as part of the Healthy Forest Restoration Act of US Congress in 2003. And the idea of it was to improve the capacity to conduct hazardous fuels reduction projects that are aimed at protecting communities, watersheds, and other at-risk lands from catastrophic wildfire, and to enhance protection across the landscape. The motivation for this was the realization from funders like the federal government that there were problems with projects being implemented when one group had come up with an idea to do something without speaking to, for example, the community about it. So they wanted to do a massive fuels reduction project, but the community didn't want to see it done that way. So there would be delays in implementation. And the idea behind the CWPP was to create the forum where everybody could get together and collaboratively discuss ideas for risk reduction in the wildland-urban interface, or WUI, in a collaborative way. And advanced slide, there we go. How does it do that? Brings all the stakeholders in the wildland-urban interface, or WUI, together. Those are community members. Thank you all for showing up. Stakeholders and groups of all sorts. Federal, state, and local agencies, fire agencies, land management agencies, basically everybody who has an interest in reducing risk of catastrophic wildland fire in our communities and wildlands. And together, we are supposed to collaboratively identify wildfire issues and threats, and prioritize the areas and strategies where we can launch projects to reduce that risk. There are 3 minimum requirements for a CWPP only, fairly simple. First, it has to be collaboratively developed with input from everybody. It needs to identify areas for hazardous fuels reduction and recommend types and methods for treatment in those areas. And it needs to recommend measures to reduce the ignitability of structures. This in 2003 was a fairly new concept. And it was really important that it was included because the realization that homes are a really important part of wildland ignition potential it is a very important thing to push these ideas forward and get people to understand them. And these concepts need to be included in projects as we move forward. What do we need to make it a success? First, we need all of y'all to keep on collaborating with us as you are tonight. And thank you very much for showing up. There are a ton of players right now in Sonoma County in wildland fire, very different from 2016 when we wrote the first CWPP. We have COPE groups, we have fire safe councils, we have land management agencies, we have all kinds of people who are doing everything they can to reduce risk. And it's becoming increasingly important that we all get together so that we can align our goals, our outcomes, and expectations so that we can create exciting and efficient projects to reduce the risk to all the environments across Sonoma County. There are basically 2 approaches to doing that. There's large fuels management projects, which are forest scale projects aimed at reducing fire intensity in forested areas. They should greatly improve forest health. They're really important. In moderate conditions, can certainly keep fire spread from coming into the communities. And the other thing that we really have to keep thinking about is within community risk reduction, which includes defensible space and structure hardening. So nearby fuels, to homes, defensible space, and all of that stuff. So inside out, from the community out, and from the wildlands in. There are 2 ways of looking at this. Both are important, but the near home stuff is really, really important to remember to consider. This is something that really is a difficult thing for us right now in Sonoma County, is that we have just been hammered. We have just been hammered for the last 5 years. We're traumatized. These fires have been huge. The home loss has been huge. There's been life loss. There's been enormous disruption. And so we're all really very thinking big. We're thinking big fires, big losses, big fear, especially this year with the weather being what it has been. But what I worry about in this is that we're so focused on these huge, very difficult to change issues, like what's going on in the 400,000 acres of forest in Sonoma County, that we're kind of not focusing too much on the small things the size of peas, which are really a lot of the story of why we're losing so many homes in Sonoma County. And so a lot of what I'd like to do today is move us out of thinking about really big things to thinking about smaller things. So one of the first people to start talking about this was Dr. Jack Cohen, who starting in the 1990s, started realizing that there was more to the story of wildland fire than forest, that vulnerabilities on the structure itself and the fuels within 100 feet of those structures, what we know as defensible space, are really the 2 primary things which are going to determine whether or not a home is going to ignite in that wildfire. Clearly, there are other things that go into this discussion, like whether catastrophic weather events like we've been seeing can really change the battlefield. What's the position of the house on the slope? What's nearby? So there's a lot more to it than just these 2 things. But at base, he's absolutely right. If you don't have a raging fire coming within 100 feet of a structure and the structure is hardened to resist ember ignition, then we've done a lot of what we can do to keep houses from catching on fire. So exactly how do they catch on fire? Well, there's direct flame, which is when there's enough fuel left close to the house that it can catch on fire and the flames hit the house. There's radiant heat, which is when the fuels are so close to the house, if they get burning really hot, the heat alone is enough to ignite elements, vulnerable elements on the home, or break windows or do other things. Typically, radiant heat, smaller cause of home loss in most wildland fires. Not so much the case in tight neighborhoods, which we've been seeing in Sonoma County. But by and large, these two issues, radiant heat and direct flame, are pretty much under the control of the homeowner by designing a good and maintaining a good defensible space. But now we all know this. 80% of the home loss in these wildland fires is due to embers, a full 80%, things the size of a pea, right? These can ignite homes by landing in the gutters, which haven't been cleaned, so they're exposing a very vulnerable part of the roof to heat and flame. They can blow in through foundation and attic vents if they're not adequately screened to keep them out. They can pile up in the inside corners. If the leaves pile up there, the embers are going to pile up there. These are all things that we really need to look at, each of us as residents of Sonoma County, to start to doing the things that we can to reduce these risks on our homes. And much of this responsibility is on us as property owners. This is a great simple checklist, which is on firewise.org. You can check that out. Briefly, what is hazard, vulnerability, and risk? What's hazard and what is risk? Wildfire hazard can be explained as the likelihood that a fire is going to happen combined with the intensity of that fire should it happen. We can get to likelihood by looking at fire history and what are the things that are likely to cause fires that are in that area. And Esther and her team are working on this in our modeling. So we'll have pretty good descriptions of the areas where we have high fire start likelihood. Intensity is defined by the fuels in the area. How much fuel is there? What condition is it in? The topography, how steep is it? How many chutes and chimneys that'll send fire flying uphill? Again, this is something else that the GIS team will be looking at in the modeling and come out as part of the wildfire index that they're working on. Vulnerability is exposure plus susceptibility. So what items are exposed by that wildland fire? So exposures would include things like people, life safety, property, homes and stuff, and environmental. What are some of our critical wildland areas that need to be protected? Susceptibility is the likelihood of damage to those homes or ecosystems should the wildfire hit. So we really need to be thinking about where are our highest risks, what are the values that we need to be protecting that are exposed to the wildfire, how susceptible are they, and then we can design projects that will hopefully hit all three high spots. So just to get an idea of what you all are thinking about in terms of how are we going to reduce risk near our home, we've put up this Minty word cloud. You follow the link in the chat and you can jump on there and submit all kinds of projects and ideas that you have about how to reduce risk in your community.
Thank you, Carly-Ann, for that informative presentation. Amanda, could you please share the word cloud input screen now? And everyone participating tonight can access this Menti word cloud screen using the link in the chat. And we're going to do this kind of quickly. So go ahead and click on that link in the chat and give us a word or two, up to 25 characters, to answer the question, what do you want to do or see done to prepare your community for wildfire? And please only enter each idea once. We welcome you to enter as many different ideas as you have for preparing your community. And we'll take just a moment now for you to generate some ideas, and let's see what comes out of this. Okay, go ahead and put in your last ideas. And then Amanda, go ahead and please share the word cloud results. And let's take a look at what you all generated tonight. Oh, wow. This is cool. So it's still happening. So it looks like a whole lot of different ideas. We're not seeing any ideas that really come to the surface in terms of several people putting in the same ideas. Everything from vulnerability to fire breaks to code enforcement to retrofits, education. So this is great. These are the kind of things we want to be talking about tonight, and these are the kind of ideas that we'll be looking at in the CWPP. So thank you everyone for your help contributing ideas to this word cloud. It's, like I said, a great introduction to the types of projects you could do as part of a CWPP. And I'm now going to share some ideas about strategies and priority projects we can do via the CWPP to prepare for wildfire. Okay, here we go. Let's try that again. Actually, we can just skip that. Okay, here we go. As you just identified in your word cloud, there are many different strategies to prepare for wildfire. We used to focus our efforts on the vegetation surrounding our communities. However, after the last several years of wind-driven ember storms, we're changing our focus to one of working from the front door out to the forest. This means we begin with our homes. We need to harden our homes so burning embers don't have a place to land and smolder and then ignite when they're blown against our homes and other structures by intense winds. From there, we can move out to clear the first 5 feet around our homes of anything flammable. In the CWPP, we can identify projects to create and encourage hardened homes and defensible space, both around our homes as well as around other values at risk we identify in our communities. These activities can begin by supporting the most vulnerable members of our communities. Moving further out from our homes, we can look at projects to improve safe evacuation, whether that be communication to ensure everyone knows how to evacuate as early as possible, to projects to removing hazardous fuels along roads that serve as evacuation routes. Next slide. Continuing out from our homes into the WUI or wildland urban interface, we can identify priority areas to create breaks in hazardous fuels, ideally shaded fuel breaks to give firefighters a place to slow down or stop a fire before entering our communities. We can also identify priority locations as well as barriers to overcome to safely and easily introduce prescribed fire into the landscape to reduce hazardous fuels and bring our forests and other ecosystems back into ecological balance. Next slide. Other projects include education and community organizing around all of the above, helping to build capacity for our local fire departments and for our local fire safe councils, and COPE, or citizens organized to prepare for emergencies groups. Finally, we can identify best practices to share information with each other before, during, and after a fire. There are also projects related to ensuring the post-fire recovery process is efficient and simple to navigate. We can suggest changes to local planning, permitting, and zoning, to name a few other ideas. These are only a handful of examples of projects we as residents can do, as well as identify and implement via the Sonoma County CWPP. Tonight, we'll have an opportunity to identify many more projects in our breakout rooms, which I'll explain shortly. So please start thinking about ideas for projects you'd like to include in the CWPP. As I mentioned, as we've learned in recent fires, what you do in and around your home can have the biggest impact on your ability to survive a fire. Carolyn is now going to tell us more about the hardened homes and defensible space strategy for community wildfire preparedness. Carolyn's message is receiving national attention, so I suggest you give her your full attention. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Next, I'd like to speak very briefly about defensible space and structure hardening and what those things are. Defensible space is basically the 100 feet around the house or to the property line where we have reduced fuels in order to reduce the power of an oncoming wildfire. Zone 1 is the area from house walls out to 30 feet. This is what we call the lean, clean, and green zone. You want this as fireproof as possible with no dead and dying plants. We have limbed up stuff and we're breaking vegetation into clumps so that it can't go straight across the landscape up to the house. This is a great idea of what that might look like. We do still have shrubs and bushes and gardens and stuff. but they're broken up so that if the fire got in here, it couldn't march straight across the landscape up to the house as it could in the pre-treatment condition. We're wanting to remove fuels from near chimneys, backing the fuels away from the homes as much as possible, and just keeping this as lean, clean, and green as we possibly can. Defensible Space Zone 2 is often called the Wildland Fuels Reduction Area. In this area, what we're really after is removing highly flammable vegetation, dead and dying stuff out of there, get rid of the ladder fuels that are under trees that could, if ignited, cause trees to ignite in the canopy. In an ideal world, you may need to do some separation of trees in that area, but getting after those dead and dying on the surface, and ladder fuels, really important, and separate trees and shrubs as you can over time to reduce the power of that oncoming wildfire. Pretty simple premises, pretty complicated talk. This is a 2-hour talk in and of itself, but that's what you're getting for now. One of the most important things I'd like to make sure and say is that defensible space is not
Okay, looks like somebody accidentally launched or canceled our breakout rooms and we lost the rest of that presentation. Let me see, we didn't lose all of our participants, so I think we're just gonna jump ahead. Kaylin, if you could put the links for what Carolyn was talking about in the chat, that would be great. And let's go ahead and launch our poll. Sorry about that, folks. Technical challenges of life in the Zoom world. So Amanda, why don't you go ahead and bring up the poll slide. Let me get out of full screen here. So, and you all are going to see a poll on your screen. And thanks, Caroleon, for that introduction. And I hope you all take some time now before summer really starts and get your homes and properties prepared, because that's what matters most. So we'd like to take a moment to hear from you about what those efforts are you are doing. You should all see now the Zoom poll, and go ahead and select all the answers that reflect what you've already done or plan to do in the next few months. This is multiple choice. So are you retrofitting your home to withstand an ember storm, learning about or creating effective defensible space, preparing your go bag, organizing your neighborhood, working with your local fire safe council, COPE, or other group, or anything else? Please go ahead and tell us in the chat, and give you guys just a little bit. Well, there's still, looks like only, there we go. We're starting to get some more, 40%. And Irving, I'm assuming that we're still working fine in the interpretation. If not, somebody could let me know. Oh, we can only choose one. Oh, it sounds like multiple choice got turned off. I'm sorry about that. We will make sure that that is corrected for the next meeting. So, well, thank you for giving us your top, what you did. The idea was to be able to hear from everything you did. So let's give it just another few seconds. Okay, why don't we go ahead, Kaylin, go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So it looks like most folks are working on retrofitting their homes to withstand an ember storm. That's awesome. Way to go, Sonoma County. You guys are way ahead of the curve nationally on this. And then also organizing your neighborhood for evacuation. Brilliant. And then learning about and creating defensible space and preparing your go bag, and also doing that community organizing. And then do tell us in the chat. So I didn't see anything in the chat. So let's go ahead and stop sharing that, Kaylin. And I'm going to get that out of the way here. I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit more about the engagement strategy. So thanks for participating in that activity. So now we're getting, and Amanda, if you could go ahead and bring up the next slide. So we're getting to the part of the agenda where we want to hear from you. First, I'm going to show you where we are in the CWP process. And remember, you can always email us with your engagement ideas, and Kaylin will be putting the project email in the chat. So basically, we had a kickoff meeting in February, which hopefully a lot of you came to. Tonight is the first of 5 public input workshops. And this is to kick off our input, which you will all be able to do throughout the summer via the public input map and a public input survey, and also through the county website and email. And we'll be giving you direction for all that tonight. Then we expect to have the public draft of the CWPP available for comment in early 2022 in the winter. And then we'll have another set of workshops to review that once that public draft is out. Go ahead, next slide. And so Esther's going to tell us in just a moment, but we've got this cool hub site for the CWPP that Kaylin is going to put the links in the chat. And that hub site currently has this cool link over on the left where you can have it be live in Spanish translation. Public input map, which Esther will be telling us about. And then if you want to give us your ideas on a map, and then also a survey for you to be able to give us your ideas that way. And again, you can always send us an email. So with that, Esther, our consultant team lead from Digital Mapping Solutions, will explain these 3 avenues for engagement and how to use it. Take it away, Esther. Oops, we're not hearing your audio, Esther.
About data and maps. I will go through this all rather quickly because we have a lot to do tonight. Your input. We are providing multiple ways to gather your input, not only about the values you want us to include in our risk assessment, but also the plan itself. First and foremost is during this meeting. We will break out into rooms where you will get a chance to submit your concerns and upvote all the topics submitted. Email is always available to you using the address permit-sonoma-wildfire-plan@sonoma-county.org. Finally, we have organized a data hub site where you can review all the online data we have gathered and offer feedback via a map or survey. Let's go there now and check it out. This is our hub site. During our breakout sessions, your facilitator will guide you through the site and other tools. But for now, let's just familiarize ourselves with the hub site. The hub site is divided into sections. The very first section is our story maps and web maps section. We have 2 tiles. The first is our community-based map, and the second is our public input map. The community-based map is a curated list of data layers gathered for this process, and the public input map is a web application that will allow you to enter data onto our map. Immediately below this section is our section housing our public input survey. This is designed for folks who have not attended a workshop, so you might want to share the survey with your neighbors so that their voices can be heard as well. As you continue scrolling down, we have other maps that Sonoma County has put together, and we also have an opportunity for you to get involved in other ways by signing up for our email list. We also have our local CWPPs listed here that have already been completed, as well as other background documents that we hope will be useful. But for now, let's go and explore the public input map. Clicking on the public input map tile will take you to a map. You will be presented with some instructions on how to use the map. When you are done reading through the instructions, click the OK button. The map is interactive, meaning you can use your scroll wheel to zoom in or zoom out. At the bottom of the page are 4 tools. The first is the legend. Clicking on it will prompt the legend to appear so you can see what all the map features represent. The next tool is the layer list. The layer list will have all the maps layers listed on it, whether they're turned on or turned off. Some of the layers will be grayed out, and that just means that you have to zoom in to see them. The option button on each layer gives you some limited ability to change the way it looks and the order that it is drawn. The next button on the bottom toolbar is the Smart Editor. The Smart Editor dialog box allows you to select a feature template so you can add your comment or project onto the map. It's not showing anything right now because those layers are not turned on. So I'm going to just open the layer list and click these editable layers and turn them on. Now they're available in our Smart Editor. So here's an example. Perhaps there are some post-fire hazardous trees in the Van Buren Creek area off Erland Road. To add that information to the map, we want to navigate to that location first. And then we want to click on the point feature template. So this map edits point layer, and here's the feature template to add a new feature. You want to click on it and make sure that it's highlighted. Then we click on the map where we want the feature to appear. The Smart Editor dialog box will change to allow you to enter in information about the point you just added. There are only two required fields, and that is to submit your name so that we know who entered in this information, and your email address so that we can contact you if we have questions about what you just entered. The next box or next data attribute that's available is this thing called value, risk, hazard, or project. And this is just a general categorization that we would like you to categorize your features by so that we know, in general what you're aiming to tell us about this place. And so in this case, I'm going to pick wildfire risk and hazard because I'm trying to identify a hazard. If it was a project, I would further categorize it, but since it's not, we're just going to click on none. And we don't have a project name, it's not a project, but I am going to include a note so that I can convey why I'm adding this feature. So I'll just say down logs post-fire need to be removed. Next, if I have a picture that I wanted to share, I can choose a file from my computer and upload that so that it's associated with that feature. So once I'm happy with all the data that's entered, I'm going to click on the Save button. The Smart Editor dialog box will reset. The last button on the toolbar is our attribute table list for layers that are turned on. So as you can see, the projects that I just entered or that are shown on the map are shown here. The one that I just entered, I can highlight. And if I double click on that row, it'll go directly to the feature that I just selected. There are three more tools that we provide here at the top. The first is the information or an about box, and it's just the same instructions that were presented to you at the beginning. So if you bypass those and you need to go back to it to reread it, it's available there. We also have our Add Data button. You can add any data layer that's available or hosted online. You can also upload a file either in shapefile or KML format and a few others. The third button is our base map gallery. So if you don't like the shaded hillshade that we have here in the background, you can change it to imagery or any other base map. So that's it for me. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you later in the breakout rooms.
Thanks for that introduction, Esther. We'll be moving into our breakout rooms next, where you'll get an opportunity to add your priority values, risks, and hazards and projects directly into our idea boards. The breakout rooms will start with an introduction by your room facilitator into this evening's process. Then you'll have the opportunity to identify values, hazards, projects, etc. And if you like, you can start with the information you shared with us in your registration when you registered for this event. So this is a virtual process, and we'll be providing you with internet links in your breakout room via the chat. So then you can click on those and then join from your own computer or device to add your input via a couple different websites. So if it works as planned, everyone can be contributing virtually at the same time. So I'm going to try to share a screen with you right now. Let's see how this works. So this is our idea board. This is what it looks like. And we'll have one of these idea boards for each of the breakout rooms. We're dividing the North Central and Southern First District tonight. And we have 3 sections, one for values and assets, one for risks and hazards, and one for projects. We can go into each one of these and say, I want to say that there's a church on 7th Street. And whoops, on 7th Street. I can also go in and make a correction to that. And then if I like that, and if I want to close it, I just do this. If somebody else puts this up and I like that, I can also click on it and say, yeah, I like that. I'm upvoting that. Be sure not to accidentally or intentionally click on the trash can to delete it. Please respect everybody's ideas. And then you just click the X here to get out. And then as we get more developed, we'll sort by votes and we'll see what comes up in our values, risks, and hazards. And then, like I said, we'll end with projects. And remember, if you're not sure what to start with, you can certainly start with the ideas you shared with us already in your registration. So also I want to remind you, you can continue to provide input through August 31st via the map and survey, which you can find here on the hub site. And as we mentioned, this icon here will allow you to translate the hub site. So on the hub site, here's our public input map. There's instructions on how to use the hub site now. This will take you over to the public input map. This is what it looks like. You won't have the rest shaded out, but this is your area. And Esther mentioned the story map editor, your layers, things like that. And then if you're intimidated by that, you can give us the same information using the survey. And you can also always send us your input by email. So with that, Amanda, could you bring up the next slide? Want to talk about going into the breakout rooms. Get this over here. And we have a few ground rules to make sure that this process, or to help ensure this process works well tonight. So first of all, everybody has an equal voice. Doesn't matter if you're new to this, or you've been working in fire your whole life. You live here, you're a resident, your voice matters. Please respect others' ideas and opinions. That means don't delete their suggestions, don't do graffiti on their suggestions, anything like that. Only vote for one item one time. If there's something you like, give it 1 vote. Don't give it 10 votes. That makes the process not work. Democracy works when we all play fair. So let's be respectful tonight in our process. So next slide. Our breakout rooms are divided by the planning divisions that we created for these workshops based on population centers and ecosystem types. In other words, where vegetation may react differently to fire. So tonight we have these 3 breakout rooms. The first is the northern part of the 1st district, and you can see the list of communities there. Second is the central, and the 3rd breakout is the southern part of the district. If you identified your breakout preference in the registration, hopefully you will automatically be sent to that room. If not, please let Kaylin or Amanda know in the chat which room you'd like to join, the north, central, or south. Next slide. This slide shows you how to use the breakout rooms and where to find the icons. Once you're invited to join a breakout, please select join to enter the room and wait for your room facilitator to begin. Use the breakout rooms icon, the 4 squares, to change or leave the rooms if you need to for some reason. And if you need help, please send Kaylin a chat message. Also, in terms of Spanish, we'll be doing live translation in the rooms as needed, and Irving may be floating. If you are needing Spanish help and you're not getting it, please send us a chat message in your breakout room and we'll do our best to accommodate you. Next slide. And if you're on a mobile device, the breakout icon is usually on the left side near the top of your screen, as shown in this slide. Remember, this process could be difficult from a mobile device, so if you can, please move to a computer now. And let's get back to the map. So fingers crossed, we're going to launch in a moment. We're going to launch the breakout room. Next slide. Breakout rooms and help everyone get moved into them. This map can help you choose if you're not sure where to go. Remember, if you're not comfortable inputting your ideas to the idea board, you can always add your ideas to the breakout room chat and your facilitator can add them for you. So go ahead, Amanda, and launch the breakouts and let's see what happens. So welcome back, everybody. Thanks for your patience with this process and thanks for contributing. I hope you're all able to contribute some ideas. And remember that you can continue to add your ideas through the public input map and the survey that Esther explained. So I'm going to get ready with the 1st District North, all sections. And then I'm going to invite Caroleon or Roberta to come up and share. Let me make sure I've got the right screen here. There we go. And go ahead, Caroleon or Roberta, whoever would like to share about what you learned in the 1st District.
I think Carleon was more attentive than I was. I was just trying to do the facilitating.
Caroleon, what did you learn?
As was sort of true for me as well. A lot of ideas about, and I need to, hold on one second, I can't.
Can you see my screen with all?
Not all of your screen, so I'm going back to the idea board screen.
Okay.
In the values and assets, we had organized community meetings in neighborhoods to get neighbors organized, which is remote homes. We have, and there wasn't a whole lot of upvoting that went on in our group. But the absolute standout here is roadways used for evacuation. So I think that everybody, there's a huge concern about that.
And Caroline, go ahead and sort yours by votes because I'm also seeing fire stations.
There we go. Now I just got it. Roadways, fire stations. We have PG&E power lines and transformers. Assisted care facilities, insurability, wildlife in Annandale. And these are all either singles or ones from there down. There's another evacuation route, so that makes 7 for evacuation routes.
And then risks and hazards.
Risk and hazards, let me pop to there. The first one that shows up is many dead trees from the tubs are still standing. There were 4 upvotes on that. Mark West Corridor, lots of dead vegetation, so there's more on that. Number of homes that need retrofit for survivability. Fuels management by homeowners is expensive. And there's 3 on that. Dead vegetation and too many plants growing together in residential yards. Dead trees that property owners don't have the funds to clear on rural properties. That's got 2 differences in how nearby neighbors are hardening. Existing landscape elements that create hazards for homes. Those are all ones that received at least 1 upvote.
And projects?
Projects. 5 upvotes. Control burns on private property by city and county fire departments on the hills above the residential areas. 4 upvotes is clear major exit and egress corridors of dead vegetation, especially previously burned areas. Hazard management in Annandale and Spring Lake and Howarth, that's got 3. Fire breaks installed in the Mark West drainage in the historic paths of fire has 2. Encourage biomass industries to deal with result of fuels reduction. Hardening PG&E lines and transformers has 2. Many with 1 upvotes, ember control management strategies, communications with internet going down.
Great.
There we go.
Thank you. Thanks everybody on the first district, on the northern part of the district for contributing. I'm going to, let's give this a refresh. I'm going to talk to you about what we learned in the central. And so in terms of values and assets, fire stations at Trinity and Cavedale and one at Cavedale, the community of Glen Ellen, evacuation routes, Nun Canyon and Calabasas Creek Preserve. And then we have several with ones, and all the ones with one idea are all going to be included in the process and in the CWPP. And then in terms of risks and hazards, large trees down on private property due to fire, the 2017 fire on Cavedale and Trinity, one-lane roads, especially dead ends like Nelligan and Nuns Canyon. And then we continue on with a lot of individuals, evacuation routes, dead end roads, overgrowth areas, that kind of thing. And then moving on to projects to prioritize and implement, stripe roads, the center and sides for improved visibility, vegetation management and thinning to protect Upper Trinity and Cavedale from fire coming up Oakville Grade, funding incentives for property owners to harden homes, and grants for private landowners to manage forests larger than 5 acres. And I did mention the Rebuild North Bay Incentives Program that folks should Google Rebuild North Bay and look at that because there is some funding coming down for that. And then a whole bunch of other ideas. So this was great, really appreciate this. And now we're gonna move over to the south. And Esther, tell us about what you guys came up with for the southern area.
Well, I wasn't as technically savvy as you guys were. We didn't get as much things on the board as we should have, but we identified quite a few values and assets, but primarily and foremost, folks are concerned about their homes and their neighbors' homes, as well as an assisted living facility near on Donald Street. Some of the risk and hazards were it has a lot to do with roads. So, dead end roads, one-way access, and also, I guess, the maze near Highway 12 and north of Verona, which I don't know anything about. And we didn't quite get to the project. So these are just, we were discussing some issues. And so I tried to come up with projects that those comments might have led to. And so that's like, possibly creating a local fire safe council, possibly a program from the county to help or guide homeowners organize and find a way to figure out who owns vacant lands.
Cool. Thank you, Esther and Caroleon, for those summaries. And thanks everybody for participating and trying out this process with us tonight. Amanda, can we have the final slide? So I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of your busy lives to join us tonight. Please let your friends, family, and colleagues know to join us for the remaining 4 workshops. They're happening on Wednesdays or Thursday nights, basically over the next 5 or 6 weeks into mid-May. They can all register for the workshops on the CWPP website, which is on the slide, and Kaylin is now posting into the chat. And you can continue to participate in this process and get more information via those links in the chat and the ones on this slide. And you can also email us directly via the email in the slide and in the chat. So to read to you what these links are and to remind you, the CWP website, which is the county website where you can register for the workshops, is sonomacounty.ca.gov/fire-prevention/wildfire-plan. And the hub site, where everything will be linked to, including the public input map, the public survey. There's a how-to up there. That's where we're going to be sharing the results of the risk assessment. You can look at the community-based map. A lot of the links that were shared tonight in Caroleon's presentations and others, those will all be linked up there. So that's going to be the hub. That's the center place to see everything. And remember, it does have live translation now. That website is sonoma-county-cwpp-hub-site-sonomacounty.hub.arcgis.com. But we've also got that link in the chat. And you can also Google Sonoma County CWPP or Sonoma CWP hub site to get there. And finally, the project email. If none of that works for you, please contact us through the project email, which is permit-sonoma-wildfire-plan@sonomacounty.org. We will be sending out emails from this email address to those of you who registered for tonight's meeting about the ongoing CWPP update process. Thank you everyone with your patience with us tonight as we launch this first meeting in the community input process for the CWPP and tried out some new technology. And thank you especially for helping us to identify priorities to prepare Sonoma County communities for wildfire. And good night.